Classroom Management Presentation by Tawnya Jacobs. Introduction. This presentation is covering 3 classroom management structures that we learned in our workshop: Stoic, Opportunity to Respond, and Early Stage Interventions. I hope you will forgive me for using kindergarten cop for the images for this classroom management presentation, but I thought the humor might help us to remember more of the information. And if you haven't seen the movie, I would recommend it. The first structure is Stoic. Each letter of the word Stoic stands for integral parts of successful and positive classroom management. S is for structure for success. T is teach expectations. O is observe student behavior. I is interact positively. And C is correct fluently. S is for structuring your classroom for success. It is imperative to think through your classroom procedures, such as the classroom having good flow, students having access to necessary areas, making sure the lesson has a mix of active and seat time, and being sure to have effective beginnings and endings, and having clearly defined expectations for instructional activities. The takeaway from this slide is to try to have a plan for everything, but realize that a few things will slip past you. That's okay. Just come up with a plan on the spot and evaluate later to determine if it works. T is for teaching expectations. Create lessons on expectations and explicitly teach students the expected behaviors for classroom activities and transitions. This is something I have tried. I like to get a few older student volunteers who will help me with an impromptu skit about how to do or not to do a certain activity. The next step is to monitor feedback during the activity and give feedback during and after the activity's conclusion. O is for observing student behavior. Most of us know that we need to circulate and scan the room and observe students. Most of us also know that we should be modeling friendly, respectful behavior. But do we periodically collect data on our interactions with students so that we can make decisions concerning what works or doesn't work? I've personally never done this, but I think it's a great idea. Data can be collected by filming the class, or by having a person come, observe, and fill out a form. The structure CHAMPS has many helps, one of them being several great observation forms to help with the information gathering process, and I've inserted a picture of it on this slide. Either way, you will gain valuable information. I is for interacting positively with students. It is very important to pour into students positive interactions. We need to welcome them at the door and continue to add to the bank throughout the day. Some other suggestions for non-contingent attention are: notice and value the students and show an interest in them. We want to strive for a 3-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions. When we have to use corrective feedback, we want it to be immediate and calm. C is for correct fluently. So you should correct calmly, consistently, respectfully, briefly, and immediately. Again, we want to have these interactions planned out ahead of time. And a good way to do this is to have an in-class consequence menu. Some of the things you could have on the menu are time out, time owed, restitution, positive practice, response cost, detention, demerits, and finally the out-of-class consequence of office referral. Speaking of feedback, giving students feedback is certainly an interaction. Perhaps positive, perhaps negative. Here are a few things to think about when giving feedback. The only important thing about feedback is what students will do with it. The best feedback provides not only information about current performance, but also on how to improve future performances. The main purpose of feedback is to improve the student's ability to perform tasks that they've not yet attempted. Finally, a teacher must know her students to be able to give meaningful feedback, and a student must trust her teacher to be able to receive it. It is all about relationships. OTR stands for Opportunity to Respond. We want to give students many opportunities to respond to what they're learning. The video that this slide is based on told us that the following list contains some things that effective classroom teachers have in common, such as they inform students exactly what will be happening in class. They use lots of skillfully asked questions. They remind kids of their expectations. They give verbal feedback. They do not use criticism and absolutely no sarcasm. Another OTR structure is SLANT. I really liked learning about the SLANT method. It is a great method to explicitly teach procedures to your students on everything from posture that is conducive to learning, how to listen, how to ask questions, how to show acknowledgement of understanding, and how to pay attention by keeping your eyes on the teacher. Each letter of SLANT is listed on the slide. The next OTR is eliciting responses. By eliciting frequent responses, you can keep your students engaged. Engaged students are less likely to misbehave. Giving students varied ways to respond keeps them interested. Types of oral responses are choral responses, partner responses, think, pair, share, think and write, pair and write, share, and study, tell, help, check. I personally like the examples using choral responses. I teach 5th grade math and hadn't considered the benefits of choral responses. Using choral responses gives students who are unsure a chance to have success. Similarly, the entire list of oral responses gives all students the chance for success by interacting with their peers and not having to answer in front of the whole class. The final OTR slide is based on delivery methods. These delivery methods offer the teacher a varied way for the students to respond in class. The verbal method can be individual or choral. I like the action method. An example might be for the student to place a pencil behind their ear when they know the answer. And finally, the demonstration method. I imagine a lot of teachers use this method. An example might be for the teacher to ask everyone to work the problem on their whiteboards and hold up their answers. The next structure is early stage intervention. The first intervention is goal setting or contracting. Step 1 is to develop a plan to review the problem and overall goals with the student. You can decide on the goal-setting format, such as formal or informal, and determine if you will be assisting in making both short-term and long-term goals. Next, decide who will meet with the student and set up the conference. In the conference, you can help the students identify specific actions that they're willing to take to reach their short-range goals. During this stage, identify ways that adults can help students reach these goals, and then be sure to set up regular times to follow up and discuss progress. Finally, review and sign the goal-setting form. Step 3 in this process is often overlooked. Be sure to provide ongoing support and feedback for the student. Be ready to calmly redirect the student if they are not successful, and to make necessary revisions and adjustments if needed. Finally, be sure to encourage the student and keep striving toward their goal. The next early stage intervention that we learned was planned discussions. This is one of my favorite interventions that I learned from the class, and I believe it is a great way to increase positive interactions. Teachers get to plan positive meetings with their students to discuss grades, concerns, and goals. This meeting is putting positives back into the student's bank, and when necessary, the teacher can also have meetings to discuss one-time events that aren't so positive. The secret is, because the positive discussions, the other meetings are successful as well. The last early stage intervention is increasing positive interactions. We also covered this concept in the I under Stoic. Increasing positive interactions with all students is beneficial. We should aim for a shift from interactions with students from positive to negative ratio of 3 to 1. The most eye-opening part of this method to me was that the teacher should self-assess their interactions with the students to determine the nature of their interactions. This will allow the teacher to make a conscious decision to have even more positive interactions. Something that really stood out to me was the point that the students who are quiet often go unnoticed, but in truth they are silently crying out for more feedback. Conclusion. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on classroom management. I believe it has some great ideas for classroom management that will have you feeling a little like this picture of Arnold.